Let's talk the cup. One more thing, like, subscribe, and share. Come on, let's talk the cup. Woo!
Good evening, everybody. Hey, it's Cutler here in the Let's Talk to Cutler broadcast. The waiting to get on board. The Let's Talk to Cutler broadcast. The Let's Talk to Cutler YouTube channel. The Let's Talk to Cutler virtual book club, whatever we're calling it these days, the vlog. I'm so glad to see you all. It is the 1st of August, and I am looking forward to this conversation this evening. It seems to me every time a new month rolls around, I have this renewed spirit, this refreshed zeal, and I'm so happy to see something that is new this new month, and I hope you all are as well. Listen, I want to tell people who are stopping by for the first time, or if they're going to catch the replay for the first time, you all hang on. Let me just go ahead and tell them that if this is their first time, we want to invite them to just come on and subscribe, because they need to know that this channel is about inspiration and motivation. It is about challenging ourselves. It's not about anybody else challenging us. It is about us challenging ourselves to show up our best selves, even in the worst of situation, trying to make sure that we've shown up better today than we did yesterday, trying to make sure that we are intentional about showing up tomorrow a little bit better than we did today. Now, listen, that doesn't mean that yesterday or today was a flop or failure. It means that we're just deliberate and intentional about making sure that we are the best version of ourselves whenever we can be. I don't know about you all, but I always want to be the very best version of myself whenever I can be. It doesn't mean that I dot every I. It doesn't mean that I cross every T. Sometimes I miss the mark. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes I fall. Sometimes there's a foible. Sometimes there's a fumble. But guess what? We get right back up and we keep on going. So we're going to incorporate that into our conversation as well. But again, this platform is about inspiration and motivation, not another somebody done me wrong song, not any more negativity, not any more pessimism, but it's about uplifting ourselves. It is about becoming new. It is about evolving. It is about growing. It is about becoming, dealing with the dynamics in life and handling them well. And that's what we do. And I get that from you all. So I want to say thank you to those of you who have been with me for the long haul. I mean, we've been doing this for going on 3+ years now. So thank you all. And so I want you all to just invite people to come on and tell them to come on and let's talk the color, because the guy's over there. I mean, he's talking about some real stuff and real people and real life situations. He really, really is. The last time we talked, we chatted about discouragement and how to handle discouragement, what discouragement really was. And we talked about dealing with discouragement on a personal level. We talked about dealing with discouragement in a professional setting. And this evening, I want to talk about disappointment, because disappointment is real too. Disappointment is one of those things that happens and nobody really wants to talk about. It happens, and there's not necessarily a space in some of our social circles or in our tribes or in our communities for us to sit around and talk about it, because sometimes when we deal with disappointments, people think, okay, you must have done something wrong. You must have done something to deserve it. But I was thinking about the song earlier today that says, I've had heartaches I've had heartaches like this before, and disappointments by the score. I mean, they just didn't come in 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes my disappointment came in 5, 10, 15s, and 20. But I want to talk about how to handle that. I want to talk about how to bounce back, how to keep on going, how to guard and shield yourself and know that they are coming. It is life, and they will come. But before I get to that, I promise you, I just need to shout out the LTTC VIPs for just a moment. Those who beat me into the chat room, and they're already chatting. You all are already greeting each other. So I want to shout out Linda Martin, Tracy Johnson, Annie Cutler. Thank you all for being the first to get into the chat. That's from my perspective. That's from what I could see. Now, if you all made it into the chat before them, just put it in the chat. We'll just have a friendly banter tonight. But again, it is so good to see everybody who is in the chat. And if you're not in the chat, come on in and talk to me, because I want us to talk about this whole notion of how do we handle disappointments. Again, I say disappointment is something that's real and nobody really wants to deal with. And we need to have this real understanding of what disappointment is. And Cutler, why you're dealing with it. I'm dealing with disappointment because, to be completely transparent, I had some slight disappointment. I don't know, not slight disappointments, plural, but a slight disappointment today. It was a kind of minor setback, but it was somewhat disappointing. And what I realized in dealing with the situation is that what is a disappointment, Cutler? A disappointment It's not a great emotion, and really, if we characterize it, it is a negative emotion to some degree. It's negative, but it's an emotion that you experience. It's one that you feel whenever. And listen to this, you all. Tell me if this makes sense. Sometimes we have to rationalize what we're going through, but a disappointment is a negative or uneasy kind of emotion that you experience, that you feel whenever the outcome doesn't match up with your expectations. Think about it. We're going to work our way right on through this. We're going to this evening, by the time these 1800 seconds are over, we're going to be okay, because we're going to realize, oh, that's what I'm dealing with. That's what I'm going through. Cutler, thank you for allowing me to define what I'm going through, giving it a name, putting a title on this thing, and giving some meat and weight to it. Not giving meat and weight to it as in allowing it to pull me under, but so I can define it and define what I'm experiencing. A lot of times we experience things and we don't take the time to define what we are experiencing. And a lot of times we go through disappointments. But think about this, you all. Think about every time you have been disappointed. Might it have been due to the fact that the outcome did not match up with your expectation? That's what a disappointment is. It's when there is no equilibrium, where there is no this equals that. Outcome doesn't equal expectation. And what does that yield? That results in disappointment. So you end up going through sometimes this feeling of sadness, this feeling of anger, this feeling of frustration, this feeling like you've lost something. That is what a disappointment is. And if the truth be told, you all, disappointments really are unavoidable. They are going to happen. They're going to happen because a lot of times we do have expectations out here. But what happens when the outcome does not match the expectation? Does that mean that I should no longer expect, Cutler? Absolutely not. It does not mean that you should no longer have expectations. Sometimes it means that you need to recast your expectations. You need to redefine or reset your expectations, because your expectations could have been misaligned at the moment. I'm saying that at the moment because I always say make sure that you keep your head up and that you keep your hopes up, and your hopes are your expectations. But a lot of times, think about why we are disappointed. We are disappointed sometimes because it didn't happen when we want it to happen. It didn't happen how we wanted it to happen. Sometimes, in terms of the when, it may have happened earlier than we were expecting. Sometimes it may have happened later than we were expecting. Sometimes it did not happen within the complete circumstances that we were expecting. So, Tracy, I like your comment, because Tracy says expectations may have been too high. And again, I urge you to set them and set them high. But given the timeline, given the time frame, given the unfolding of your milestones, your expectations may have been a little beyond your outcome at the moment. But keep dreaming, keep hoping, hang on to all of that. And you just have to ask yourself, okay, in terms of where I am now, am I at least on the trajectory of seeing that my expectations and outcomes will collide, that they will meet, that they will be one and the same? And if you are on that trajectory, just keep on going. Again, sometimes we are disappointed because the outcome has not happened at the time we want it to happen, but that does not mean it isn't going to happen. Let me just toss that in there. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It could be that the timing is slightly off. And so when your timing is slightly off, you've just got to go with the greater scheme of time. So you ought to, I love, so you all are talking to me, and I love that Paula says some disappointments are a result of misunderstandings. Absolutely. Some disappointments are the result of misunderstandings, because what happened on either end of that equation? Was there a misunderstanding about what I really wanted, what I really expected? Or perhaps was there a misunderstanding about what the outcome is, what it looks like? We have to think about that. Think about all of these disappointments, because I'm sure people have come to us and shared their disappointments, and we have to talk this thing out with them. We have to walk them through it so that they don't give in, so they don't give up, so that they don't throw in the towel. What are you going to say to them? Now that you know that a disappointment is just really what happens when there is there's no congruence. That is the word. There's no congruence between expectation and outcome. So when people talk about being disappointed, you have to address one or the other with them. It's either the outcome or the expectation. I like what Linda said. Linda has said. Linda says we live in a microwave world. You're absolutely right. Because what happens a lot of times is I am disappointed because not that it didn't happen, but it didn't happen when I wanted it to happen. I'm telling you, you just have to think about all that because now what's going to happen is that you find yourself going through this sadness and this somberness and this loneliness and this loss and this anger and this frustration because you have dealt with this disappointment. But you have to speak to yourself and say, "Self, what's going on with this disappointment? Was it on that side or that side?" And walk yourself through it. Marissa, can we think of another way to approach the issue? Can we? Right. So when we talk about this is what I expected, but that's the outcome. So now is my perspective clear? Is that really what I was expecting? Am I clear about what I wanted? Am I clear about what I was hoping for? Am I clear about what I thought the outcome was going to be? You all are giving some excellent conversation pieces for when we have to deal with and chat and try to strengthen and encourage people who are dealing with disappointments. Because you can deal with a disappointment when something positive you expected happened. I know that sounds crazy. You can experience a disappointment when something positive that you expected does happen. Why might there be a disappointment, Cutler? Because when it happens, it may have happened earlier than you expected. And so now you have to shift your schedule. You have to shift your resources. You have to shift your way of being. You have to shift your way of showing up. You have to shift your way of doing things. You're happy about the positive outcome, but there's some things now that you have to shift. Ev- Don't be dismayed. Everything is not going to happen on the timeline that we necessarily want. So hang on, just hang in there. At least now that we understand what a disappointment is, this is what happens when a disappointment is building up. You all walk through this with me. It is a psychology of disappointment. It is the buildup of disappointment. You might be in an uncertain situation and you're hoping for a positive outcome. You might think or believe that you actually deserve the positive outcome. This is what's happening mentally. Think about it, you all. You're in an uncertain situation. You're hoping for a positive outcome, a different outcome, an outcome that's going to work in your favor, work to your advantage, because you really think that you deserve the positive outcome. You want the outcome. You believe that you should have it. And think about this. You want that outcome. You think you deserve the outcome. And if you're like me, you've done this. You fantasized about how your life is going to be with that particular outcome. Have you all ever done that? I know I have. I need to raise both hands and my feet. This is what happens. This is the psychology. This is the psychological buildup that leads us to disappointment. You're in the situation. It's a situation, an uncertain situation. You hope for a positive outcome. You think you deserve the positive outcome, and because you deserve the positive outcome, you now fantasize about what your life is going to be like when this outcome comes your way. So we're on our way. Thank you, Yvonne says I'm with you. So we're on our way to now experiencing disappointment because you're surprised that you didn't receive the outcome that you hoped for. You fantasized about how your life is going to look, how your life is going to change, how your life is going to take on new dynamics because you fantasized about that particular outcome. And now you're surprised that the outcome does not manifest the way that you were looking for it. And when it does not manifest the way that you're looking for it, you feel anger, you feel bitterness, you feel hostility, you feel resentment that you could not control. Here we go, that you could not control the outcome through your personal actions, through your personal control. Make sense? I want to walk through that again so that we can evaluate, so that we can analyze the buildup, the psychological buildup of disappointment. And maybe somewhere along the line, somewhere along the buildup, we can say, okay, let me recast, let me redefine, let me rebuild this piece, this thing. Let me change my perspective in terms of what it's going to look like. Linda, you're absolutely right. I was thinking of that very example. People do that when they purchase lottery tickets. You fantasize about what your life is going to look. If I win this, I'm gonna pay off my house. I'm gonna buy this person a house, buy that person a house. I'm going to pay off any loans or any debts that I have. I'm going to buy this car. I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to help the homeless. I'm going to help you do all of these things. It is that same kind of fantasizing that takes place whenever you are hoping for any kind of positive outcome in your life. Cutler, can you give me a real life example? Absolutely. You submit an application for a job. You're not necessarily on a terrible job or a horrible job. You want a different job. So you're in this uncertain situation where you don't know, I don't know how long I want to stay here. I don't know if I want to work here. I think I want another job. So you're in this uncertain situation because you want to shift to another career, another job, what have you. So you submit an application. And now you're hoping for a positive outcome. I really hope I get that job. Oh, I really, really hope I get that job. In fact, I've applied for 3 jobs. I hope I at least get one of them. Because, watch what I said, because I deserve it. Why do you deserve it? Well, you may not use the word deserve, but you use a word like, I'm qualified for it. I have the requisite experience, the educational background, the work experience. I'm good for it. I expect it. I'm qualified. So you're hoping for a positive outcome. You believe that you're qualified or that you deserve it. You fantasize what your life would be like in that new position. I don't have to deal with that manager. I don't have to deal with those staff members. I don't have to deal with those coworkers. I don't have to make that long of a commute. I don't have to work those hours. I don't have to make that amount anymore. All of those things, you fantasize about what your life would be like with that particular outcome. And you are shocked. Your world is rocked when you don't receive the outcome that you're hoping for. And when that happens, you feel sad, disappointed, there's the word, anger, resentment. And why do you feel that? Why do we feel that, Cutler? We feel that because you could not control the outcome through your personal actions. You were not completely in charge of the outcome. And that is the psychological buildup to disappointment. I think it's the same for all of us. Let me know if you all followed that course of build up to disappointment, the road to disappointment, as it were. I think it's like that for all of us. Hope is a great thing. I said at the end of every broadcast, keep your heads up and keep your hopes up. Keep expecting. But I want you to be, I want you to be clear and have a clear understanding that hope is what keeps us going. Hope keeps us going. And unfortunately, the downside of hope may be temporary, ever so temporary, but the downside of hope can be disappointment. But I've talked before about keeping your hopes up, saying you've got to say to yourself, it is going to happen. And whatever temporary trials and setbacks that I'm experiencing, you've got to say to yourself, this too will pass. Because what's meant for me will come to me. What the French have this saying, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. I changed it and I put it on a different platform and I said, what's meant for me is coming to me. And it's coming to me in a way that is irreversible. It's coming to me in a way that's irrevocable. It is coming to me in a way that's irrefutable. And you've got to hold on to that and believe and know the same thing. So as you're dealing with disappointments, just now learn to recast your disappointments, because your disappointment may have come because you thought it was going to happen at a certain time. Recast it. Keep your hope going and say, you know what? Let me just recast my hope. What does that mean, Cutler? Just put it on a different timeline. Put it on a different trajectory. Put it on a different date path, a different pattern. It's going to happen if it's meant to be. That's one way that you deal with disappointment. When you see yourself going on this decline to disappointment, all you need to do is make an adjustment in your mind and walk right back up the hill. Either you're going to go down the decline to disappointment, or you're going to go back up the hill to hope. Oh my God, I love the alliteration. If anybody knows me, they know that I really like alliteration. And so either you have to say to yourself, am I going down the decline to disappointment, or am I going back up the hill to hope? If it's for you, you'll get it. The Bible says to hope in God, and in him is no failure. So eventually what should happen will happen to you. He holds my times in his hand. Absolutely. When we stand on that plateau and we take that perspective, you hang on to your hope. And you have to say that my time and my times are not always in my control. Because if they were, I would have maneuvered some things differently. I would have orchestrated things a little differently. But when I hang on to hope, hope says that the bad things that I'm going through, they eventually will pass. And that the bad things are going to work together for my good. That's hanging on to hope. So I want you to know it's normal. It's normal to struggle and feel overwhelmed by disappointment. It really, really is, you all. But here's what I want you to do. Don't let your disappointment linger. It's okay to take some time to think about how the outcome and the expectation were not congruent at the moment. But try not to focus on those negative emotions for a long time. Don't let negative emotions foster or fester for a long time. There's another passage that I think about when it comes to negative emotions, and it talks about anger. Be not hasty in your spirit to be angry. Here's the part of that sometimes people miss. For anger rests, it stays, it resides in the bosom of a fool. And I'm not calling anybody fools, but what I'm saying, what I'm not calling anybody a fool. But to put that in context, it means it's not a good thing to let anger rest inside, or to reside inside, or to linger inside, or to stay inside. It is the same way with disappointment. It is not a good strategy to allow yourself to let these negative emotions linger. Not at all. Because you have to say to yourself, and we've said it before, Linda, I love these comments that you all are making. A disappointment can be an opportunity for growth. It could possibly be, and in my mind, you all, I just have to tell you what I see for just a moment. In my mind, I see an expectation, and I see us walking along the path to our expectations. And so we're hoping that outcome and expectation will be the same thing. But what I see is there along this path is this outcome. There's this outcome, and it does not align with our expectations at the moment. You know what I see? I see us walking along a park, and that thing that looks like disappointment, talk about turning it into a positive. That is why I enjoyed what Marissa said earlier. Can you think of another way to approach the issue? One of the things that that I like about that is changing your perspective. So imagine we're walking through the park and we're expecting to get to a certain point in the park. And maybe, just maybe, your feet are hurting. Maybe something happens, you just suffer fatigue in your body, and you don't get to that point in the park yet. You don't get to that point in the park yet. But at the point where your feet are hurting or you're experiencing fatigue or exhaustion or tiredness, I see a park. I see a bench in the park. Sit on the bench. S- Sit on the bench for a moment. It does not, let me sit up. It does not mean that the ultimate place where you're trying to get does not exist, because it is there. What's simply going on is that your body is tired. Maybe you're exhausted, you're thirsty or anything, and you have to sit on the bench for just a while. You've got to recalculate. How am I going to get there now? Let me think. Maybe I just need to sit here for a little while and just let people jog and run right on by me, let people skateboard right on by, let people ride the scooters right on by, and you just watch them, and it looks like they're going in the direction of where you want to go. But guess what? In a moment, you're going to get up and go in that same direction. I need to encourage somebody this evening. You're just taking a reprieve, a temporary respite, a brief rest stop. No, you haven't gotten there yet, but the key word is yet. That's how you handle disappointments. You recast that thing, you redefine it. And I said some time ago, you have to redefine what failure looks like for you. No, you haven't gotten there yet, but guess what? It does not mean that you failed. Because before you define it as a failure, you just say, you know what, this is a temporary setback, a temporary disappointment, because right now outcome and expectations are not the same. But guess what? The outcome, the expectation is still there. Which means, I love that Abraham didn't just hope, he hoped against hope. So that means when I set my expectation, my expectation does not change. And I am still going to have an expectation that my expectation is waiting for me. So I'm expecting all along the journey. When I'm walking through the park, I'm having an expectation that I'll get 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. So when it looks like my expectation is moving away, I'm still hoping, I'm still having expectations. The farther it looks like your expectation is moving away from you, then you just set many, M-I-N-I, set your many expectations. And you say to it, no, you haven't outrun me. I just haven't caught up with you. You haven't outrun me. I experienced different outcomes along the way, but it is going to happen. I just talked myself into something, you all. It's going to happen. I'm disappointed that it didn't happen when I want to happen, but I've learned how not to let disappointment linger inside. It's going to happen. I may have to change the calendar, change a few events. It's going to happen. And I want to say to you, what's meant for you is going to happen. Hang on to your hope. Learn how to recast and deal with the disappointments. Understand how to handle understand how to define what you're dealing with. I always say to myself, if I can just give it a name, if I can just put words to it, I know what I'm dealing with. If I can just put words to it, I'll learn how to give myself time to reflect on it. I'll learn how to adjust my expectations, and I'll make sure that I just don't let it linger. I just said something that I hope helps us all, because really I'm just trying to help save somebody's life. When you're dealing with disappointment, those are things that you do. Give yourself time to reflect. Let me stop and reflect on what's happening. Let me make sense out of what looks like went wrong. Let me make sense out of my grief. Let me make sense out of my loss. Let me make sense out of my sadness. Let me make sense out of my anger. Let me make sense out of my frustrations. Give myself time to reflect and think about why I'm calling that a disappointment. And then I have to learn how to adjust my expectations. Maybe I felt disappointed because the thing didn't turn out exactly as I expected. Maybe I feel disappointed because it didn't happen exactly when. But if you adjust that expectation, you can still feel less disappointment and keep right on moving on. Learn how to adjust your expectations. And then don't let it linger. I forgot to get out of here. Don't let it linger too long. Why am I saying all of that? I'm saying all of that because it helps us to take care of our physical, our mental, our social, our spiritual, and our emotional health. You all know my frame of reference. We're in the second half of the year. We're moving right on. And this is not the time for us this is not the time for us to suffer the inability to define what we're dealing with in life and develop strategies, life strategies to deal with these things. I hope that something in this conversation, something in these 1800 seconds helped you. I really, really do. Like I said, I was dealing with some slight disappointments or a slight disappointment today, but in this conversation and approaching this conversation this evening, it really helped me. And my resolve is it's going to happen. It really is. My resolve is it's going to happen. Life is like walking through a park, and I'm trying to get to that destination in the park. And sometimes while I'm trying to get to that destination in the park, I just may need to sit down and take a breather. I thought I was going to be able to walk directly there. Life happened, and I had to take a breather. I thought I was going to be able to do 100 crunches or push-ups. Somewhere along 20, 25, I had to stop. But I stayed in position. That's another conversation for another time. I didn't get out of position, but I took a break. It's okay. Don't let people pull you under when you're in your moment of disappointment. You deal with it. And instead of going down that decline to disappointment, go right back up that hill to hope. Clearly, there's going to be a slight struggle, but you'll make it. I offer you the strength. I come with the offering of saying hope again, even when it looks like you're dealing with a brief decline to disappointment. I offer us all the strength and the power to hope again. Thank you for sharing this time with me. Let's do what we do. Let's keep building community. Let's keep maintaining connectivity. Let's stay safe. Let's stay sane. Let's keep our heads up. But more than that, we've talked about it tonight. Let's keep our hopes up. Please know that from my heart to yours, there is and always will be so much love. I thank you all for sharing this time with me. Stay safe and tell someone, come on, let's talk to color. I'll see you all the next time I see you. Good night, everybody.